Hello, everyone. This is the Global Healing Circle panel, and we have a special guest today. But first, I am Christina. I'm a holistic well-being coach. I help people with the mind, body, and soul. And my two other panel members.
Yeah, hi, I'm Nora. I'm from Finland. I am an energy healer and a spiritual life coach. And basically, I help people to make the best out of their life and to create the kind of life that they need and want to create.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amos Campbell. I'm a full spectrum energy healer from Peoria, Arizona, and I help you find a more sustainable way to feel better with less pain.
Great.
And I would just like to announce Father Nathan Castle. He is a Catholic priest who has this special gift of helping, I say, stuck souls cross over. And I know you've changed that verbiage a little bit. So just so excited to have you. And yeah, so what is it that you do and how does this process work?
Well, first of all, I'm a Roman Catholic priest. I live in Tucson, Arizona. I'm 66 years old and have been a member of the Dominican order in the church for 42 years now. We're semi-contemplative, so we're supposed to have the prayer life and the centeredness of a monk, but the availability to the world that would not be contained within the walls of a monastery. The specific work that you have asked me to talk about today is a large part of what I call my night job or a late in life vocation. I receive dreams about once a week from a person or persons who have died suddenly and traumatically, who are at the end of an afterlife kind of first level of therapeutic work. Their deaths were so abrupt and so violent and so on that it's understandable that whatever the normal progress of a soul out of this body and onto the next level of life might be is what I call interrupted. I love words, and the word rupture is embedded in the idea of being interrupted. Something tore into the fabric of what might have been expected and interrupted things. So I just receive little things that are sort of like a video, as our dreams are, largely pictorial, and people show me something of how they died without making it overly gory and graphic. They can tell the story and convey what happened to them without terrorizing me in my sleep. I write it down. I schedule with prayer partners, very much the way we scheduled the time to be together today. And when we are together, either in person or on Zoom, we go into protected prayer. I don't move into this realm. I say I don't pick up hitchhikers on earth or on any other plane. I first surround myself with angels and saints who I know will keep me safe and keep my partners safe. After we've done that, most of the time, I'm the one who makes my voice available for someone else to borrow for a short time. Once in a while, I'm with prayer partners who have that facility, that gift. I avoid the word channeling and mediumship because in my Catholic community, both of those words have an effect or a resonance that's unhelpful. They're associated with the dark and so on. So even though I have plenty of friends who are mediums or channelers, I choose to describe what I'm doing as using a gift of prophecy, which is well described in Old and New Testaments in the scriptures. So in brief, that's what I do.
Beautiful, beautiful. And if you can just kind of explain a little bit further about the process of these prayer partners, what does that mean exactly? What do they do? How do they contribute? And how do you meet these people?
Meet which people? The ones who come in the night or the prayer partners?
The prayer partners.
Well, the process is mostly conversational. The people that we're helping just in our process need an opportunity to explain what they've been through, both at the time of their death, what they've been through since that's predisposed them to be ready to move. They're very much like we're like the discharge staff in some sort of medical center. Either any of the three of you or any of your viewers and listeners who've ever had to be in medical care for an extended amount of time, everybody wants to go home. No one wants to like be in a hospital any longer than they have to be.
Yeah.
But when it is time that you're released, there's someone whose expertise it is, often a social worker, who makes sure that you understand your new context, you gather your things, you understand your medications, your next physical therapy appointment, who's coming to pick you up, will you be well fed and well clothed, so on, while you're still on the mend. We're a little like that. The people that we help have been helped by others to the point where they no longer need this level any longer, and they're ready for the big adventure that we, I think, assume that the afterlife must be. And we just sort of help them out the door. We help them figure out, who would you like to have come for you, assure them that they're safe and will be well cared for, and then help them move along.
Oh, that's very beautiful. And the process of these souls that come to you in your dreams, more on the astral. So it's happening in this astral realm where they come to you. So when you're actually accessing them, have they ever told you that why they're choosing you? And I've heard in a few of your interviews and in your book, you kind of mentioned this. So if you can please.
Yes, and I really quit asking because I get the same answer over and over again. They've often said, I don't know, somebody brought me here. That's a very common response. Another one is, your light was on.
I love that.
One lady who died in the 1950s in the United States and was used to catalog shopping. Those, I don't know if any of I remember them. I'm old enough to remember those huge catalogs arrived in the mail, and
yes,
you know,
Spiegel catalog for Christmas. That was
Spiegel or JCPenney or Sears. They were enormous. You could really do some damage with these things. They were like an old phone. And then you page through it, and there'd be some serial number that you filled out on a paper form and put in the mail. Well, anyway, this lady was used to shopping that way, and she said when it came time to get ready for this, they gave me a catalog and they said, just sit still with this and page through it and see what appeals to you. She turned a page and there I was. And she said, oh, I think I'd like that one. He's a Catholic priest and I was a Catholic, so I'll choose him.
Wow.
So I don't know how it all happens, but it does. And there's no way in the world that I've met lots of people who do this work from all different points of view, different spiritualities, religious trainings, philosophies. And sometimes I end up, comparing notes with them on a Zoom call about how do you do it. And sometimes they're asking me for advice because they feel like they don't know what they're doing. Maybe it's just begun to happen for them and they don't really know why or what. And so I just give them I ask them good questions to help them ground themselves in the way they do this work.
Yeah. And you've been doing this a long time. So
about 25 years.
Yes. And how many souls have you actually helped? Have you kept track?
I didn't, and I've also done lots of weddings and I don't have any idea how many. And funerals, I've done lots of those too, or baptisms. I just never, kept track of all the numbers of who I've been involved with, but it's more than 400. I know that, probably between 400 and 450.
Oh, wow.
I've gotten better in recent years about keeping better track, but I was involved doing this for years before it occurred to me to do that.
Yeah. So I would just like to hear a few of the stories that stand out for you.
Sure.
Sharing with our viewers and really what has had the most impact on you.
Okay. Well, over my shoulder, you can see a copy of one of the books. They look alike. There's two of them in this series, and we kept the branding. We wanted the look of it. This is the first one. They're called Afterlife Interrupted, books 1 and 2. I don't tell people stories unless I've gotten their permission. I just think they're highly personal stories that ought not be shared on a forum like this one without people's knowledge. So I'll go back to them. I don't chat up people that have died just for my own amusement. I only go and talk with them if I feel like I have a really important reason. And one important reason would be, may I share your story because I think it could help people. And so the only stories that I share are better told in my books. Well, I mentioned Wilhelmina a little while ago, the lady with the catalog. She was unusual in that she did not die a sudden violent death. Her husband did and died in front of her. His death wasn't violent, but it was sudden, a cerebral hemorrhage, I think. He dropped dead right in front of her, and it was so shocking to her that she really never recovered. I think she lived 8 to 10 more years, but she shut down inside, kind of died before she died. And she felt something like, she called herself an actress. She acted the way she thought other people expected her to be, because being her authentic self was too painful. And she got afraid of being herself, that it would hurt too much. So instead, she lived at a kind of a safe distance from her own story, which was exhausting for her. She said after a while, she was a Catholic and she would go to mass, but she quit staying after mass for the coffee and donut social time. She lost her community because she quit being a part of it. She would go to a church service and then rush out and rush to the store and buy what she said, milk, eggs, and bread, and go home. And if anybody saw her, she would make an excuse about the dog or the cat needed her right away. That poor gal in the afterlife, when she did die, she chose to move at a very slow pace, the way that she was living since her husband died. She lived at a very low energetic level because she felt like that's all she was capable of. And so her helpers in the afterlife said, well, as long as you give us something to work with, we'll work with what you give us. And it's your life and you may lead it any way you please. And so she understood that she was self-limiting even in the afterlife by choosing a rather slow, low energetic way to go about things. But her helpers said, well, we will help you at the pace that you allow yourself to be helped. And then she thought of the way that she was as a girl in school, that she wasn't the brightest student, but she said it depended on the subject. Once in a while, I could be the one that won the certificate or the ribbon or something if I applied myself. I knew what it was like to work hard to learn a thing. And I also knew what it was like to put in less effort. And I've been putting in less effort. So they over a while, they encouraged her to kind of step up her game. And she responded to that and eventually was able to be ready to move to a next level.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that there's a choice, just like in, this realm of reality that we're living in. There's a choice to be in that state, and a choice to be in the state even outside of our body.
Yeah.
And you speak on still having emotions.
Yes.
in that realm, which is really fascinating to me, because I've always learned that once we kind of leave the body, even hearing NDE stories, that there's nothing but unconditional love and joy and peace. And so what is your take on that?
Well, you can be surrounded by unconditional love, but you still have to let it in. Your consciousness, you still have the freedom to form your thoughts. And those thoughts can include limiting thoughts even after we leave the body. There's nothing magic about dying. I mean, it changes a lot of things, but doesn't change everything. And if you're a person who pays a lot of attention to fear, and if you bring that with you, it will still be a part of your ongoing existence. And people, some are more risk averse than others, some are more playful or adventurous than others. And remember, the little population that I'm working with all died traumatically. And so sometimes there are people that have been in a trauma loop. If you're familiar with PTSD, or your viewers and listeners are, sometimes people don't even feel like they have the freedom to form their thoughts because this invasive thought keeps coming in. Just a moment ago, we were interrupted by spam risk. Spam risk calls me about 6 times a day trying to sell me one thing or another. They just push their way into my phone and into my life, and I just have to hit decline. There's still something like that in the afterlife. We have to choose the way we respond to our environment, even if it is completely loving.
Yeah. So there's definitely something said for healing these traumas on this side in this life.
Yes, absolutely. And all of your panelists are in healing processes of one kind or another. I believe that work is cumulative, even if people avail themselves of some sort of healing or perhaps overcoming an addiction or something, and then backslide,
Right.
I still believe that it's cumulative. And every bit of energy that you put toward wholeness and healing and growth and love, even if it doesn't look like it's changing anything, I believe it's cumulative, and it shows up even after death.
Right. Yeah. So one of the things I'm also really curious about are these kind of different levels. Do you see the afterlife as different levels? For instance, just speaking of ghosts, when people talk about ghosts, what are they? What is that? Is that in a different realm than what these other souls are at? And do the dimensions or the realms keep moving up and closer as you're becoming more whole into this consciousness? Maybe soup is another word for it, or a wholeness. What is your
Well,
from what you've learned in these with these souls? Yeah.
yeah, a lot of my answer to a lot of questions is I don't know, but here's what I think. And the influences, I'm a lifelong Catholic. I wasn't just raised with the dietary laws and restrictions and stuff of a religion, but I had great parenting, and I had a team of extended family and schooling and stuff that taught me spiritual practice from tiny, before I could read. So that there's that, and then there's the experience of working with this population that I have for the last 25 years. And I've worked a little bit with ghosts, although that's not really in the heart of my work. I'm interested in the research that's going on with quantum physics, and especially the idea that everything is energy.
Yes.
And material energy, like the bodies that we're in right now, is one kind of energy, but when we leave this body, our energy will find a new equilibrium, a new level at which to be. It does seem like there are some souls that we think of as ghosts, that is, disincarnate humans that seem to be clinging to this level of existence, sometimes in ways that are benign, other times in ways that seem to be like poltergeist, kind of prankish, and then other times that are more malevolent or scary, and so on. I've worked a little bit with them, and I believe that if it's a human discarnate being, and if I'm brought in, I just try to give them options. I try to, if they're receptive to my presence at all, I just say, are you happy where you are, or would you like to try something else? And here's what something else might be, and open their imagination to a possibility they might not have thought of before.
Nora, I'd like to invite you to talk a little bit about your experience.
Yeah, well, first of all, I am an energy healer, and in my healings, I sometimes encounter also souls that are attached to my clients, and they usually, I don't see them. I just know that they are there, and then I do some negotiation, like, okay, so it's your time to go, and sometimes they are ready to go immediately, and sometimes we need to arrange someone to bring them home, and sometimes we have to just say that, okay, if you don't want to go, then like you just have to leave this person alone, and you can move wherever you want, and it's the choice of the soul. But what happened like first time in my life is that now actually last week I saw one, and this happened in the Camino del Norte, which is like in the northern part of Spain. On my second day of it, it's a long trekking route, and all of them end up in Santiago de Compostela, which is one of the Catholic places that people do pilgrimages to.
Yes.
And there I have heard people telling that the veil is very thin there. And I was walking with my niece. She's a very very open person, and very intuitive. And we were walking like just outside of a small village, entering the forest, and she checked behind, and she was like, Nora, there is someone behind us, like a man with an axe or something. And I checked, and I was like, yeah, true, like he really looks very weird. He had like this like dark green or gray very ancient, maybe like 100, 200-year-old clothes, and he was carrying a big axe, and we were thinking like, what is that? And we couldn't see his face, like that. It was just like more like a figure, and we just speeded up a little bit with our walk, and then we never saw him again. Even though the road was only one road, there was no way of like turning in any crossroads or anything. And just like 10 minutes after that, I started to think like, that was not a normal human being, that was like something different. And then like I needed to kind of like tell about it to my boyfriend, and his uncle is very spiritually open, and they checked it with this kind of like pendulum thing, and they said that yeah, it was actually a soul, like a person that already passed away like over 100 years ago. And then later I went back to that situation in my mind and in that place, and I kind of found him from the same area, and I talked with him, and he was actually shot. Like that's what came to me, like he was shot, and that's why he died like suddenly, and he didn't realize that he was dead. And then I helped him to pass over. But it was so weird because I have never seen it like on a normal day, and now I have. And well, I believed everything before, but now I know that it's completely 100% true and not my imagination. Yeah.
Fascinating. So that kind of brings me to a question about this ghost that did not realize he was passed. And then these souls are completely aware of their passing. Is there, I mean, what is that? Why is there that difference? Why do they get stuck without knowing? Do you have any idea, anyone?
I come from things from an opposite spectrum because I'm going to see this as a shared psychometric event. Any time or any place, anything there's like stone, metal, anything organized and configured holds energy very well. Like she passed through this area where this person had been through a long period of time. That gentleman's energy had literally seeped into the ground. Now, two people who are highly psychically sensitive and charged walk into this trigger zone and essentially create a memory illusion of the spot. That person walked through that. You're literally watching a psychic recreation of that moment. That's what I would have chalked this up to, as a shared psychometric event, because everything holds memory. Muscles hold memory, like molecules hold memory, atoms hold memory. So absolutely, but in my opinion, it would have been a shared psychometric experience to clear the energy, to clear the space, because in my opinion, that soul would have already gone on, but that psychic energy is separate and still left there. So in essence, she did a huge service by cleaning that up. So another person can come and go through that area who may be open and sensitive and just enjoy the view without having that happen again, because that's probably happened to hundreds of sensitive people forever and they just didn't know what was going on. But as a professional psychic with the actual technicalities of the classifications of all the psychic abilities, this is a shared psychometric experience. But that's my take.
And Father, what is your take on it?
Well, I wasn't there, so I'm only, receiving the story and so on. So again, I don't know, but here's what I think. That would be my preamble. It could be what Amos just said. I hear that from other people, and I'm around in this realm with people like yourselves, and I meet at IONS or Spiritual Awakens International. We come from lots of different cosmologies and understandings of things, but one of the things that I just try to do is listen with respect and possibly learn. I don't know. The way that I would probably have dealt with that was to presume full presence of a person. That, Amos, you would have gone about it differently, it sounds like, but that's my training, and that's what I would have done. I would have said, how can I help you, presuming that I was dealing with a person who was there and not an energetic signature of someone who used to be there. That's the way I would have gone about it, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like there are like two phenomena. One is that you have like kind of the film looping, like the person walking a certain time and then starting again and looping again. And then another phenomenon is that it's actually still there. And what kind of comes to me is that when I went back to that place and I connected with him, that he had a personality. He wasn't like an empty shell, that he was there, he was thinking and feeling and telling me and then leaving after that. So in that way I would kind of separate those two phenomena in my mind, that it can be like just a film or it can be a film with still something inside. I don't know, what do you guys think about that?
I'd like to add to my take on it. I never go into this realm without first moving into prayer. And my prayer often is really kind of a gathering of a huddle. I surround myself with holy ones, St. Michael the Archangel, Holy Mary, St. Dominic, the founder of my order, many others, and especially what I just call the Holy Spirit, which means the great breath, the whole breath of God. And I just say, give where I don't understand, let wisdom move and help me to, if there's something I can do to help this circumstance, let it manifest around me and through me. I don't necessarily need to understand everything in order to be helpful.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to look at it, because then you're kind of leaving it open, right? You're not putting your own beliefs into it. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And you are letting the best to happen, because in our mind we are very much limiting, also in the healing work. Like I am spiritual, but I don't have any religion. And what I do is that I always, before going anywhere, I ground myself, and then I ask the energy from the Mother Earth and from the sky and the purest love and light to come and heal whatever needs to be healed. And then in my practice, I'm also asking sometimes the angels to come if it's something very difficult. But I see the angels like as very powerful, beautiful, loving beings, and not really religious. It's like I don't really know. I don't have a religious background, so I don't have maybe the words for it. But what I do is that I have the same, I kind of do the same thing than you, Father, but with like a non-religious wording.
Yes.
Say so. Yeah.
And I that kind of leads me to angels and guides. So in a lot of the stories, you say that everyone has their own guide. And is there a difference between angels and guides? And is like, what are these guides? Are these guides here with us now? Do they follow us to eternity? Yeah. So explain that a little bit.
All right. Well, some of your viewers and listeners might have grown up within a Catholic tradition. There's a little prayer that's often taught to children that goes, it's addressed to one's angel. So you're speaking to your angel when you say this guardian angel prayer. Angel of God, my guardian dear, to whom God's love commits me here, ever this day be at my side, to light, to guard, to rule, to guide. So when people talk about a guiding spirit, that's built into the concept that Catholics have of a guardian angel. I've known my guardian for a very long time. And what I've seen in the work that I do is they never leave us, that they are paired with us at the time of our moving into matter at conception and stay with us. And they understand that they can guard us, but they also understand that we were mortal from the outset when we move into an incarnate life, and that we're going to die one day. So mine have all died such violent deaths. You might wonder, where in the world was their guardian? Why were they in a car crash? Why were they shot? What was the guard doing? Was he asleep? No, they have the limited powers that a parent might have. Parents know all too well that part of their job is to become somewhat obsolete. You send that child off to school and hope that they come back in one piece, and you can't follow them around all their life and protect them from every unhappy event. So they're present to everything we do. They don't read our minds because it's rude, but they observe us all the time, and so they can become pretty good predictors of what we might do next because they watch us all the time. They can move into our cognition if we invite them to. They can be advisors if they're asked for their advice, but they don't offer it without being invited. They're persons, but they're not human persons. They're a different kind of personhood, but they have intellect, will, freedom. They can be as different from one another as you and I are from one another as humans. Some of them are very task oriented and rather serious. Others are very playful and adventurous, but they all love us, and they do follow us after we leave. At least the ones that I've observed have their guardians still with them because they still need guiding. They didn't really make it. The ones I deal with didn't really make it all the way peacefully into an afterlife full of freedom and love. And so for at least the phase that the ones I help have been in, their guides, their guardian angels are still there.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated by some of the stories that you actually go back to visit with these souls after they've crossed over. Now, do you ever get to speak to the guides again? Or I'd like to go back to a little more detail on just some of the stories of revisiting these souls when they crossed over and what they're doing and how they're doing. It's almost like, you're having a cup of tea and having a conversation. It's really
those of you that do some sort of you have clients or somebody that you help, there's probably some that you work with and you perform your service and they move along and you don't ever see them again. And then there are others that perhaps there was just some spark of connection that happened that you keep in touch somehow. Anyway, when I go back to ask their permission to use their story publicly, it's a yes or no question. May I use your story? It could be a really short conversation, but sometimes people take up the opportunity to say, since I was with you the last time, here's what happened next. And one of the things that frequently happens is the desire to learn something new. There are just so many opportunities spreading out there in front of you, and all of it's new. And so you get curious, you want to know more about how to do a thing. And then when people form that thought that I want to learn, they find out almost immediately that they're not the only person that wants to know that. And that there are afterlife academies, if you will, clinics, classes, schools, where you can be with other people. I'm on the campus of the University of Arizona, as I said, and I live here. I love to be where people want to learn. And it's a joy for me to be in a community of people that want to learn. And a lot of the people that I've had conversations with later tell me about what they've been learning.
So are there any stories that stand out to you that you'd like to share about what you've learned from them on the other side?
One that's real sweet that I don't mention a lot was a young woman who was in an accident at 24 that I thought must have killed her, but she said it only killed half of me from the waist down. She was paralyzed. And she went through all kind of therapeutic work to try to regain whatever was possible. And she said, I saw little incremental changes, but I was never able to stand and walk. I was in a wheelchair for the rest of my life. But unfortunately for her, she had to rely upon vans. In the United States, they're often called dial-a-ride, where someone with a van comes to pick you up and they have the lift on the back of it to take you in your wheelchair into the van. Well, the operator dropped her on her head and she died.
Oh my gosh.
So she had two big traumatic tragedies in her life, the first one at 24, the second one at 36. And she, of course, came to me. That's why I knew of her at all. But then when she came, she really had a kind of an attitude. She was really angry and kind of mouthy and not all that cooperative. And I just had to remind her that, well, sweetheart, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do, but it was you who came to me. And if you find me annoying, you can just leave. But if you want me to help, I'll try. And she calmed down. She was just, she kind of wished after she died that there would be no more her. The way that sometimes people who commit suicide not only want pain to stop, but they want life to stop. And then they find that, well, no, it doesn't work that way, that I'm still me somehow different. Anyway, she didn't commit suicide. She died accidentally. But after she did accomplish the passing that she came to do, it was her physical therapist who came for her.
Oh, wow.
She had a physical therapist. She had lots of them. She said, I was in physical therapy almost every day of my life. And much of the time she hated it. She said many times they came in with a clipboard and check marks next to things, and they made us do stuff, and then they left. But then she said, Estelle, she used the word swan as a verb. She swanned into the room,
Oh.
and and before even saying anything, she just started like these balletic moves, and she got them all to mimic whatever she was doing. And she said it always felt like art when Estelle was in charge. And the time went so quickly. All she was trying to do was get these people with motion problems to move more. But then she told them one time she had a dire medical diagnosis of stage 4 cancer. She would keep them updated about it, but we have work to do. And each time she came, she would give them a little more of an update. And she said, and the progression of her disease was more and more apparent to us anyway. But eventually she couldn't come any longer, and then she died. And she said, if I need somebody to help me move, it would be Estelle. That's all she ever did. The only role she had in my life was to help me move. And so Estelle was happy to come for her and help her kind of dance her way into the afterlife. But then in the interview we did afterwards to ask permission to use her story, she said, I'm a little girl who's about 10 years old, and all I do is cartwheels on the lawn.
Oh.
I'm doing handstands and cartwheels. And nobody is saying to me, get in here and do the dishes. Stop that nonsense. Nobody is stopping her. She just said, it's ridiculous, I know, and I probably won't do it for too much longer, but all I've wanted to do is do cartwheels and handstands. And then she said, at some other point I'll find other things to do, but for right now I'm content to be a little girl on the lawn doing cartwheels and handstands.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Wow.
Isn't it?
Well, one of the stories that kind of intrigued me more about her after story when you went to revisit was Sophia.
Yeah.
And she was from book 1.
Mhm.
And when you spoke to her again, because she had a very tragic death in a tragic situation, and you went to speak to her to get her permission to write it in the book, and you asked her about sending a message to her family, or if she'd like you to speak to her family about how she is at that point. And she said no. And do you have any of the souls want to speak to their families?
No, and that's not really the way I remember that story. The question that I was focused on was, may we use your story at all? But the truth is, she was actually murdered, but her murder was accomplished in a way that made it look accidental. And it was not public knowledge that she had been first raped and then murdered. And neither of those had come to light. And this was long enough ago that she had children who were small at the time, who were now grown and had children of their own. And her concern was, do I really want them to have to move through the rest of their life
Yes.
with the knowledge that I was raped and murdered? And she just decided, I think I'd rather they were free to live their life without. It's sad enough that they lost me and their father. He had died before she did. So they were orphaned. And she said, I don't think I want them to need to move through the rest of their life knowing that there'll be time for that later.
Yes. Yeah.
So no, she wasn't asking for me to contact anyone. She was just thinking that, she said, if this book ever found its way to them.
Yes.
And so we changed her name at her request, just so in fact, in case it ever did get there, that she wouldn't necessarily be recognized.
Yeah. But are there any instances where there are some souls that, that are still connected to their families or to loved ones, or even are they connected to the place where, either they died, or maybe a cemetery or anything like that?
Well, there's several questions in there. One of
Yeah,
them is, are they
sorry.
connected to their family? People can do lots of different things, but I remember one woman died while her children were young, and she felt very robbed, almost betrayed by the universe, that, I gave birth to these children and I thought the deal was I was going to be allowed to raise them. And then she suddenly died and felt cheated and angry. And I just said, well, that's your perfect right. But you also knew that people do sometimes die in the middle of their life. And, you're not the first person who ever died leaving young children. If you want to continue to be angry and upset about that, it's your perfect right. But I don't think you'd be here with me if you don't that if you want to keep doing what you're doing, you don't need me.
Mhm.
But if you want to do something different, I might be able to help. And so the question she had not asked is there any way that in my current state of being I can still somehow take part in some appropriate way in the ongoing life of my children?
Mm.
And she did get to the point, she asked that question and I said, sweetheart, you're asking the right question of the wrong person. I'm here on earth and I don't have kids and I've not died as far as I know. But if you should ask your guardian who could coach me in how to move forward with the idea that I might be able to be of help to my kids, ask that question and you'll get the right person will come for you. It's just not
Mhm.
me.
Mhm. Mhm.
I feel like my part, I don't know how you guys feel in the therapeutic work that you do. Do you ever feel like you're sort of in a relay race? Those races where there are four people on a team and they pass a baton to the other one. I often feel like I'm not the first and I'm not the last. I'm
Yes.
either the second or the third. I'm just somebody that's in a chain of events. And I know that
Yeah.
if I do my very best, I can advance someone else's prospects. But then I hand the baton off and it's not up to me to chase after them and find out how they did.
Yes,
I
Yeah,
go on
I
to the
think
next
so
one
too.
and help the next one.
absolutely. For sure. Well,
Yeah, and I very much believe that people, either living people who need healing or now the souls that come to you, that they come at the right time in the right place. Like we cannot force anything. Like even though we see that someone would really need healing before this person is ready, we cannot really do anything. We can just send them good thoughts and hope that one day they will find a person to help them. So
That's
it's
why
probably the same thing.
I don't go looking for people. Sometimes when people learn of me through a show like this one, they want to contact me and ask if I can get in touch with their dead child or something. And
Mm,
I just say, I'm sorry, that's not what I do. There are others who might do that, but I limit
yeah,
myself to helping those who come to me and I don't really advertise.
yeah.
I sleep. I go to sleep. And if someone finds me in my sleep, well, very well, then I'll work with that one.
mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. So are there any of them who have crossed over that have given you any information to possibly help anything that's happening on Earth, any future events, anything like that? Have they come back to help you at all with anything in your life?
Yes, in a way, you know, it's still remarkable to me that I'm on Zoom and talking with somebody in Finland and somebody in New York and somebody else up the road in Peoria, that I have a podcast now. I've got the YouTube channel, all that stuff. I can hardly even recognize myself sometimes. And I'm always doing something that I don't know how to do. And so I call them the book people, and the 26 stories that are in the book, and then about 400 others that are not in the public. And I collectively go to them and say, hey, book people, if any of you know how to do this next thing that I don't know how to do, could you help with this? I'm interested right now in trying to putting together an intercessory prayer circle of people from all over the map praying for one another according to however they do it, whether they have a religious background or not. If they have some spiritual practice that they think is beneficial for other people, would they be willing to be a part of some team or thing that I can put together to help people find a way to, I don't know, spiritually help each other?
Yeah, I would definitely love to be a part of that. And I think
Me
many
too.
of our viewers would be
Okay.
as well. So I was going to ask you if you had any projects going on or new books
I
or
have
anything
several,
you'd
yeah.
like
That's
to.
one of them, because I get a really heartbreaking stories from people through my website who feel stuck in this life.
Yeah,
Sometimes because of addiction, and addiction is just so prevalent. Sometimes it's because of chronic illness from which there's doesn't appear very much likelihood that they'll recover. Bedridden folks, sometimes just heartbroken folks, but they're in grief, or they've been through breakups or family dysfunction or something. Anyway, I end up with these folk, and then I try to say to them, yeah, well, but you could still help others. And do you have a prayer practice or a spiritual practice of any kind? Would you mind praying for this? And I'll give them an assignment. I'll say, the next person I'm going to be talking to an hour from now has this thing going on. Would you pray for that? So I'm trying to think about that. And then I have 2 other books in the works, another one in this series. And then any of your viewers that or listeners that might have ever read the Gospel of John, it's the oddest of the 4 Christian Gospels, and it's the most theatrical. I want to write a book about
Hmm.
the Gospel of John as theater.
Oh, interesting.
So that's in the pipeline. And then I just have a new podcast I'll be doing a new episode in about an hour
Oh,
later today.
wonderful, wonderful. Well, where might our listeners and viewers be able to find you? And we can put all the information in the
Sure.
description.
They can find me through my website, which is my name, Nathan, Nathan -Castle, Castle, Nathan-Castle.com. On the website, there's, a contact form. I just ask that people don't ask me questions about my books without having read them. They're easily available, they're inexpensive, they're in paper form, they're in ebook form, and they're in audiobook form. And so I just don't have enough hours in the day to explain things that I've already explained. So if you're intrigued, first avail yourself of the books that are out there. And then after that, if you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. And very often the questions are coming from brokenheartedness. They're not just curiosity. Very often the questions are coming from the fact that my loved one has died. Where are they? How are they? I prefer that. I really don't like Facebook Messenger. And so even though I have Facebook presence, please don't try to get me engaged in a conversation there. I just don't like it. I'd rather get an email through and then sometimes I'll arrange a Zoom call with a person. I do say to people that I think of myself as one who gets people unstuck. So I'm like a tow truck driver. I can get you out of the snowdrift or the mud next to the road, but I'm not going to follow you down the road.
Yeah.
I don't do ongoing counseling, with people I meet this way. I try to do one helpful session and then say, I hope this helped, and please look for another resource that can travel with you.
Yeah. Now, are you
Mm.
still doing retreats? I had read a while ago that you were doing some retreats and
Yes.
yeah,
I'm
nice.
about to do one. I'm still an active Catholic priest doing fairly conventional things. Sometimes I call this kind of conversation the ozone layer, and I'm still human, walking on the ground like everybody else. And some of the things that I do are quite ordinary, mundane. And and we're entering into the season of Advent, where at the end of November, we'll be starting a new cycle in the church calendar. And that's all about newness of life, pregnancy and Christmas and so on. So I'm doing a retreat in California coming up soon. I'm speaking at the UN, which is
Oh,
exciting.
wow.
I never thought I'd do that.
Is it about Catholicism? What is that?
No, it's about this topic about my
Nice.
afterlife interrupted.
Oh,
Where
interesting.
it's for a group. I think it's primarily chaplains who work at the UN, but I can tell you more about it after I've done it. I'm going to show up and speak there. And then working on books but the retreats are great fun. And I have a first book that I wrote about the Wizard of Oz.
Yes, I'm so happy that you brought that up because I have a question about that.
Well, you asked
And
away. I'll
hey,
get a picture of it over here in a second.
cool.
What's your question?
In this moment, I have to thank everyone so much. I still have one last client of the evening,
Okay.
and I have scheduled this client, and I don't want to move it. But this was a big pleasure. Thank you very much. And
Okay.
I will look the rest of the panel later, so I will learn everything. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
God bless your work.
Yeah.
Okay, Cool. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Nora.
She's a sweet soul.
Yes. So
Over my shoulder, you can see in the background
yes.
a print. That's the book. And here it is. Can you see that?
Yes. And I'm part of a healing group that we meet every Sunday. We do an energy healing. And there's always a theme that comes up with ruby slippers. And the ruby slippers, Dorothy's ruby slippers they always come up. So I hadn't read the book, but I would love for you what is your interpretation of the
I have a whole retreat on the ruby slippers that I do with people in person. Well, I use Catholic imagery, and the Catholic ceremonies, sacraments that have to do explicitly with the Holy Spirit, with the breath of God. Red is often the color of the Holy Spirit. So at Pentecost, the color is red. At confirmation ceremonies, the color is red. And I think of them as the gifts of the Holy Spirit that you're grounded in. She didn't know what they were. They just landed on her feet. You know, she looks down and goes, oh my, I'm standing in these. And she didn't know what to do with them. So I do a retreat on the gifts of the Holy Spirit as understood through the Catholic tradition and explain them some. And then I also do Ian's people. Dorothy has an out-of-body near-death experience. She gets hit in the head with debris from a tornado. She falls onto the bed, and then she swirls into this other consciousness. Eventually, she comes back for it, and she lands back in her bed. And they even say, we thought for a minute there we were going to lose her. She almost died. And then she says, oh, but I was gone for days and days. That's just it. And now I'm home. And just like a lot of people who have had NDEs, she has trouble communicating it. She can't get anybody to completely understand it. And then she just decides, oh, Toto, it doesn't matter. We're home.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I like helping people get all the way home, whether it's in the afterlife or in some cycle of life, part of the journey that we're all in right now. So that's what that book mostly deals with.
Beautiful. Well, I think that's a great way to end. Is there any other questions you have? Oh, we can't hear you.
Oh, you're muted somehow.
Oops, sorry, I muted myself. No, I'm very interested in picking up your book and reading a little more into it. I just watched just a little bit that Christina had shared with us before, so I'm very fascinated.
Well, obviously, we're not very far apart physically. If ever you wanted to meet up,
absolutely, we definitely want to have coffee and discuss. I find it wonderful, and yes, from a different perspective and different point of view, when you got the message that your light was on. So technically, I am a person who has aura vision, and I teach people how to develop and see what you cannot normally see with your own two eyes. So for us, it is called the blue ring effect. It looks like you wear a helmet, and it is a bright blue light. So it's very unique to this sort of energy wavelength. All thoughts are on a specific spectrum, and yours is exceptionally bright, like a radiant lighthouse. So it's a unique structure because every soul has an affinity.
Yeah.
And that's what is very unique about yours. So that's what I want to find some more common ground about this.
Sure. Love to.
All right. Well, I would just like to say thank you. If there's any one thing that you can tell our audience, like maybe how to approach healing their trauma or any words of experience.
Some people phrase that question as like, what's the purpose of your life? You know, what are you here for? I believe it's to first receive love, magnify love, and give love. And I believe that I have two holes in my head right here, nostrils, that whether I'm awake or asleep, I'm breathing in life. And one of the ways that Christians understand God is Holy Spirit, holy breath, respiration. I believe that we're surrounded by love every day of our lives, even if our circumstance is grim, that we're still in a sea of love. And I can receive love, I can try to magnify it and give it away. And I can do that awake or asleep every day of my life. And so can anybody else.
Yes. Agreed. Thank you so much. And please subscribe, like, and we hope to see you soon. Thank
Okay.
you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye, everybody.